Northern Chinese dumplings, which are extraordinarily easy to make at home, we're going to make from scratch.
Ingredients: you'll need flour,
1 kilo of pork mince, heroes of Chinese cooking with ginger, no Prince Charles photo this time.
So let's get started with making the dough for the dumpling skins. Now, I've done this before in my hand-pulled noodles, but ratio is 1 to 3, which basically means 3 cups of flour and 1 cup of water with literally a tiny bit of salt, maybe a tablespoon of salt. So you can see I've actually accelerated this process, but in reality this process actually took about 10 minutes. I've said before, it's a bit like pregnancy. Desire to rush the process is real, but it will take you about 10 minutes to get 3 cups of flour into a reasonable dough. It's ready when it doesn't fall apart and your hands are clean. You want to cover it with a wet cloth for about 20 minutes.
Let's make the meat filling. So the usual heroes of Chinese ingredient processor. So you want to throw in the garlic, you want to throw in the ginger, you want to throw in the shallots. Let's slam this garlic before we actually put it in there, because you don't want any of the skin, that's useless. So I'll just chuck all that in there. Now, it's very important that the flavoring of the filling is the most neglected but the most important part. You got to remember, you're essentially making meatballs here and they have to taste good. Put in a dash of oil before you get into it. And so let's blend the flavoring, but it's so important that you get the flavoring of the actual filling right. And another technique that's really important is that you want to put the mince at the bottom, as we will do here. And what you want to do is that you want to put all the flavoring on top. This is really important because it makes sure that the juices of the flavoring mix that you're doing don't just get lost in the actual mince. Anyway, then you want to put 2 tablespoons of salt in there, depending on how salty you like it, lots and lots of pepper. And this is something I haven't introduced before, but 5 spice powder. You can actually buy this from Woolies, you can buy this from Woolies, but let's put in some 5 spice powder. It's basically a really good mix of 5 spices commonly used in Chinese cooking. I've got no idea what they are, but just buy it. Trust me, do yourself a favor. Anyway, give it a nice good mix. So what you want to make, it's like what we said before, you're essentially making meatballs and you have to make sure these meatballs taste good. And if you neglect this part, you're going to get really shitty dumplings. So make sure that every little bit of the meat is really minced in there with every little bit of the flavor. I cannot emphasize how important this is. Make sure you get every tiny bit of the flavor into that process. Anyway, so once you've... So you can probably see I'm really going at it, but you really want to make sure that every last bit of the flavoring juice is actually well mixed. So keep using your hands. You can actually use a really big food processor if you like, but old habits die hard. I've got this idea that it just won't work. And then at the last step, you can add a little bit of veggies. Frozen vegetables is actually the easiest way to do this because you get a nice good mix. I'm just using corn here, but you can actually use whatever frozen vegetables you want. The trick here is not to put in any vegetables, which would add too much water into the mix. And just give it a nice good pat to make sure that you're really getting the flavor in. And then you want to transition it into a plate and just let that sit there. Veggie filling for all my vegetarian friends. So I'm using mushrooms as a base. Mushrooms is really good. I really recommend using mushrooms because it's essentially a vegetable with very little moisture. These aren't mixing so well in the food processor. I need to get myself a real one. But anyway, I'm just going to shake it by hand against all the safety instructions. There you go. That's done a good job of chopping it up, despite nearly killing myself. Anyway, let's get that mushrooms in there, and then I'm just going to add the rest of those mushrooms. And now that I've worked out the trick, I'm just going to shake it and mix it at the same time in defiance of all the safety instructions. There you go. That's really chopped up all these mushrooms. And then what you always need is that you need a nice base. So now nuts is really good, and the reason why nuts is really good is because nuts are actually quite high in oils, and the oil is very important. Without oil, you're going to get a really crappy base. So so literally, as you can see, I'm just going to throw in a whole bag of mixed nuts, a bit of everything in there. And let's just shake all the nuts until the nuts are well grounded. There you go, just like that. And then dump in the nuts. You might remember the usual heroes of Chinese ingredients. Let's just put in some shallots, some garlic. And you might be wondering, where is the ginger? Well, you don't actually need ginger because there's no raw meat. A little bit of oil and the usual flavoring process. So let that all mix up. And and you literally just want to throw that in there. Now, keep in mind, this mix, which is pretty dry at the moment, has to resemble meatballs. So let's throw in all the usual seasonings, so pepper, spice powder, salt, and then you want to start mixing it. But before you do that, what I usually do is to crack eggs into it. If you crack eggs into it, you'll start giving it that moisture that you need. So you can see I'm really going at it, and my girlfriend's hijacked this and decided to put some more fried eggs in. She really likes fried eggs. Anyway, really get into it. You want to really make it nice and mashy, so much so that it basically has to resemble meatballs. That's what it has to do. So you want to, now remember, when you're making any filling, you're absolutely not allowed to add water. The moment you add water, it's going to get way too wet and you're going to have serious problems when you're trying to wrap the skin around it. So no water. If you need moisture, add eggs or add oil. But that's about ready. Let's transfer it into a using plate. So now this dough, which has been there for about 20 minutes, is ready to be used. We're gonna make the dumpling skins. So the first step is to get a little bit of this dough, and what you wanna do is you wanna roll it. Now this might resemble the noodle video I've done previously, but it's essentially the same thing. What you wanna do is you wanna just roll, and a lot of people will ask, how thin do I have to get it? Well, pretty bloody thin, that's the answer. So you want to just keep rolling, and what you want to do is that you want to put some flour at the bottom so it doesn't stick to that surface, but you want to keep rolling it until it's, well, I suppose as thin as possible, really. Don't worry, because you're rolling by hand, you're not going to be able to get it to that thin anyway, but just keep rolling, it's really not that hard. Rolling. Now this process is actually pretty hard work. It's a bit like a second round of pregnancy, really. You just have to keep pushing, it's going to get better, and then what you want to do is you want to get a cup and start making the little, and then what you want to do is that you want to get a cup and start making the base for what will be ultimately the dumpling skins themselves. I prefer a shot glass because if it's any bigger, then the things you're doing is too big. So yeah, step is to roll these skins even thinner. That's right. So yeah, I wasn't lying when I said that the dumpling skins need to be pretty damn thin before they're actually usable. But anyway, you get the point. You want to just basically roll them so that they're double in size again. And then what you want to do is that you want to start just layering them onto a plate. It's much easier to just do this. When you're making dumplings, it's really quite methodical, you know. You want to basically just do it step by step. So, you know, what you're doing here is that you're producing all the skins so that you can have a big dumpling set, so you can have a big filling session later. But anyway, you want to just roll them like this on top of each other so that you're going to roll them on top of each other so that you could use them easily. Anyway, you can see I'm just rolling away here, and basically you want to just roll them so they're double in size. Keep dusting it with flour because that's what will stop it from collapsing onto each other. And there you go, that's a lot of skins. Now let's start making the dumplings. So what you want to do is that you want to get a spoonful. Now the most common problem is to try to stuff it with too much filling, so don't do that. And what you want to do is that you want to put enough filling in there and then just you want to really make sure that you're sealing the sides. This is the most important bit, because if you don't do it properly, they will fall apart when you boil them. So I'm just going to do a few of these so you can get a nice big spoonful of filling, put it in the middle, wet the sides like this. See, we want to wet one half of it, and then you want to do that. And just see that, you want to really make sure that you're squeezing the sides shut. Just really use your strength here and squeeze the sides. Anyway, let's dust this pan. You want to keep dusting with flour so that you can so the dumplings don't stick to each other. It's a bit like 80s parties. There's just a lot of white powder everywhere. Anyway, you get the point. You want to just make these dumplings one by one, just like this. Wet the sides, and then really clamp that shut. I can't stress the importance of making sure that the sides are clamped shut. I'm just gonna, and I think and I sound like a broken record, but you want to just squeeze it with your hands so that they're sealed right shut, just like that. It's so important. Now I've just realized that this plate I've got is a little bit small. I'm going to trade it for a tray. Anyway, let's keep going. We only have about 100 more of these to make. Anyway, you get the point. It's really important to seal it properly. Seal it properly. If you don't seal it properly, you're going to get into serious trouble. Anyway, you get the point. So it's very similar to making noodles. Make sure the pot is boiling. Actually, I'm going to add some more water and throw the rest of them in there, but you get the point. You want the pot to be boiling. While that's doing, let's do a killer sauce. Similar to most northern Chinese sauces, you want to get some garlic. So why don't you chop up that garlic, chop up some shallots, and you want to throw that into a bowl, and then, you guessed it, dump in the chili. So, bit of chili. I've got chili oil here, but chili powder works just as well. I'm going to put in the chili powder. And then, you might remember it was all oil pouring. You got to wait till the oil's smoking. There, now let's just pour it in there. There you go. You can see the oil really smoking. So that oil's essentially cooked all of that garlic and shallot. You want to dump in some soy, give it a good mix. And then the similar amounts of vinegar. So I don't really measure, but as long as it's the same amount. Now leave the soy there, and then as a last step, you want to put in same amount of the dumpling soup. This soup's really starchy. You want to just start taking these dumplings out. You can actually see some meatballs in there, and that's because I haven't sealed them properly. So what's happened is that they've fallen apart. Oh well, it's okay. I'll just give them to the dog. He'll be grateful. Let's get all these dumplings. Let's get all these dumplings out of the pan. Ugh, there's a few meatballs in there. Oh well. Anyway, let's throw the vegetarian dumplings in there. You want to always eat dumplings in the bowl, not a plate, because you can't dip properly. You got to get plenty of that sauce. The dipping sauce is very important for dumplings. You just grab it the real right way. There you go. Nice, and that's a wholesome specimen. Give it a good dip in your dipping sauce. And once you buy it open, and get another dip of sauce, so it all goes inside. If you've learned how to make these dumplings well, you've actually learned how to make xiaolongbao, but we'll do that in the next video.